Hey everybody, welcome to week 11 of our Ask Our Vet series here from the studios at Earth Animal. It's amazing that it's already been almost 3 months we've been doing this and been in lockdown for all that time as well. Starting to ease up a little bit, which, phase one most places. So hopefully everyone's continuing to be safe but still get out a little bit. Anyway, so I'd really like to listen to this and a little Stevie Ray Vaughan to start, but we're gonna have to gotta get down to business, right? So I hate to shut it off, but we're gonna. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. Friday afternoon, another week. We're looking at a weekend. Hopefully, weather-wise, it's going to be a good one. I think most of it's going to be good. We're going to get some of this rain that we have right now into tomorrow morning, but it looks like towards the end of tomorrow it's going to brighten up, and then we'll also have a good Sunday. I hope everyone had a good, healthy week. And it's a weekend again, right? So we've got a few things to talk about today. We're going to start with another COVID update, which each week seems to be better news. There is a new development we'll talk about in the animal world this week. So we'll start with that, and then we're going to go into today's topic, which is toxins in companion animals. I thought, this time of year, it's something good to talk about, both the indoors and some outdoor ones, right? Because we're going to be out with our pets more, and I think, some of these are going to be you're going to know about, and some you might not. So I thought this was a good topic to talk about today. First, COVID, right? So another week down. Cases are dropping. I heard yesterday that even in New York City that they had their first zero fatality day in New York City, either yesterday or the day before. So certainly things are trending in the right direction. And so we just have to continue practicing what we're doing, right? In the animal world, there was some news that came out 3 days ago from upstate New York that they had a shepherd, I believe, a dog, test positive for the CoV-2, the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes the COVID-19. It was in a household where they had a person that was previously tested positive and someone else in the household that was not tested but had the symptoms. So they assumed that there was multiple people in the house with it. The dog had some mild respiratory signs and then was tested positive. Again, like the other animals that we've talked about, just the very few that we've talked about in the States for companion animals in the past, mild respiratory signs that were expected to pass relatively quickly and the animal to make a full recovery. So it seems like these very few animals that are testing positive for it are getting very mild signs and then, and recovering well. So that's all good news as well. All right. I think that was it as far as new news on it. And I just think, a lot of the stuff on the virus front is positive with numbers going down. So we have to continue to monitor those and, continue to practice, wear masks, practice social distancing, and let's just keep banding together. I mean, we're all in this together, so let's just continue. All right. I thought, those of you who are just joining us, and I do a segment every week called Earth Animal of the Week, and obviously Earth Animal of the Week could be any animal, a person, a companion animal, a wild animal. I thought this week, I usually try to incorporate something that, that I'm seeing, something that I've seen when I've been out on a hike, or something that, an animal that I've read about, or an animal I've seen in the clinic, or a person that has moved me, or something that's going on. And, this week, one of the things last weekend, what I noticed is all the fledgling birds that are now taking flight from the nests. And, the birds were chirping and yelling all over the place this past weekend and through this week. So I just want to make, it's just amazing to see this nature and see these young birds just learning to fly and their parents doting over them while they're doing it. But it does present some problems, right? This is a time of year where you have to be very careful letting your own dogs out into your backyard. You want to check first and see, because last weekend I had to take one of these little baby birds out of one of my neighbor's dog's mouth. Okay, unharmed. Actually, just shake it a little bit, unharmed. I was able to put it down in a safe area. The parents were right over it, and it did great. But it is something to be aware of because they are running all over our yards right now. And I think to that effect, it's very important that everybody realizes that, you know, these guys are learning to fly. The parents are there. They're not in trouble, so you have to resist the urge to pick them up and bring them inside. And, you know, we get a lot of phone calls this time of year of people that have taken birds or, you know, think they're in trouble. And it's all, you know, obviously it's born out of caring, but the best thing to do is leave them in their natural environment, let them learn how to fly, just to be aware that they're out there, you know, for your own animals. Okay, so I think that's important. But I just, you know, I watched from my deck last weekend just birds of various kinds of birds, and these fledglings, you know, just first just bouncing around and then flying a few feet, and then all of a sudden flying to a low bush, and then being able to take off. So it is, it's really wild to be able to just sit and watch nature like that. So anyway, Earth Animal of the Week, these little. Hey, Geraldine, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Anyway, so fledgling birds, Earth Animal of the Week, right? All right. So anyway, let's talk toxins. You know, for a small animal practitioner, ingestion of toxins is something that we see all the time. There is, believe it or not, some seasonality to it. There are certain things that we will see. And when I'm talking about the list, I'll kind of mention that. We're going to do dogs first, then we'll get into cats. I would say that, and Stephanie, Dr. Ulrich, if you're watching it all, I don't know if you agree with me, but I would say that in my practice and kind of my experience in the past is we probably see more toxin ingestion by dogs than cats. You know, I think when you talk about ingestion of things like foreign bodies, you know, and I think we see a decent amount of both, but I think as far as toxin goes, I probably see more toxin ingestion in dogs than cats. And Stephanie, I don't know if you just want to weigh in and out what you're seeing out in the island, but I think that's pretty common. And because one of the things is because, you know, several of these toxins are food-based for dogs, all right? And so that leads us into our number one, something we see the most, and that's chocolate. And you know, the vast majority of people know that chocolate ingestion in dogs can be toxic, okay? Now, luckily, most chocolate, so what the thing that makes chocolate toxic to animals are two compounds in it. One is called theobromide and the other is caffeine, okay? And so these animals can get really heavy GI symptoms, vomiting and diarrheas from these things, all the way up to, you know, because we have stimulants, all the way up to some heart issues with it, okay, depending on the amount, remember that dark chocolate contains much more of these compounds than milk chocolate, so, and it is dose dependent, it is, so, you know, if you have an animal that eats Reese's peanut butter cups, all right, that has peanut butter, but it has a coating of milk chocolate, obviously that's not going to be as debilitating to that animal, depending on how much they eat, but not as debilitating as if they ate a dark chocolate bar. There's a vast difference, and it is very dose dependent. And, you know, one of the things that I want to stress in all of this is it is very important if you see or think that your animal has ingested any of the things that we're talking about today, the first phone call you should make is to the ASPCA poison control line. And that number is right online. You can look it up. Because they have such a wide database. Now there's a fee. Some of the microchip companies, as Stephanie were talking earlier, Stephanie pointed out, some of the microchip companies, it comes with your subscription to the microchip, but there is a fee, but it's well worth the fee because they have a database of all these toxins. They know by weight with your animal dosages and what can do this and what's your first steps, okay? Sometimes the suggestions will be to make your animal vomit at home. Oftentimes you will not do that. So it's not something you just want to rush and try to make your animal vomit at home. Because you can actually do more harm than good with certain ones of these. Okay, so again, we get into any of these and what we're talking about today, your first call is to the ASPCA Poison Control Hotline, and they will direct you based on what you're seeing on what to do. Sometimes that's make your animal vomit. Sometimes that's make your animal vomit and go to the emergency, the referral center or your veterinarian. Sometimes it is do not make your animal vomit and get to your veterinarian, whether that's your primary or if it's obviously after hours or something like that, to the emergency clinic. All right. So anyway, back to chocolate. Chocolate is one of the most commons. When we talk about seasonality of toxins, obviously around holidays, there is not a veterinarian on the planet that doesn't get dozens of these calls in and around Halloween, obviously, and Easter. So there are seasonalities with those, but most people have some, or a lot of people have some chocolate in their house, so it's something that we get year round, but they're just heavier times, okay? The next one that we see along that kind of same candy line or, foodstuff line is xylitol, okay? Xylitol is a compound that is contained in a lot of sugar-free gum, all right? And, xylitol is amazing because xylitol can do a lot of damage to an animal very quickly. It's something that an animal can get a stick or two of someone's gum. They just find some wrappers. It was on their dresser or, on the counter or in a pocketbook. The animal took it out, chewed it. And some people don't think anything about it, but in fact, it's one of those toxins that has short acting effects and then longer acting effects, right? So initially, what you could see is really what they call profound hypoglycemia. Their sugar levels can drop so low that they can have seizures. Okay, so that's one of them that can become a true emergency and something that you want to act quickly on. And then long term, they can actually get over that initial phase of the hypoglycemia and then start to develop liver problems and sometimes even in advanced cases, liver failure. So that's one that you have to be careful. And I tell everybody, even with their children in the house, it's really big to stress that no one should have any sugar-free gum out anywhere where the animals can get into it. I think that's really important to stress, especially with kids. All right. So the third one that we want to talk about, if we're along the same lines, we're sticking with food and we've got some other things, is grapes and raisins. I think with dogs, a lot of people know that you can't feed them to dogs. Some people, I've had people not think, okay, and give their, they know grapes, but they just gave their dog a piece of toast that it was cinnamon raisin toast in it, or just give some raisins. So I've even had that happen in my family in the past. So it's something that people need to be aware of, and that's sometimes it's one of those toxins where sometimes the dog does okay and doesn't react poorly to it, and then other times they get severely sick and then go into kidney failure from it. So that's one. And in my house we have these, I talk about my dogs all the time. I know we have these adopted dogs that can get on the counters, and our youngest one has we're working on it, has a tendency to try to get up on the counters. So even just leaving a bowl of grapes on the counters, or when you come back from shopping and leave, you just have to always be attentive to that, because that's not something, obviously you want them to ingest. All right. One of the other food items that I think a lot of people are unaware of is onions, right? Onions are toxic to dogs. And it's something that people don't, I understand that very few people are going to go and slice an onion and give their dog a piece of onion, but that people sometimes will give them some chicken soup they made with onions in it. Or I had a dog once that they were preparing a picnic, and they had a bag of like Sabret's onions, prepared onions, and they had it on the little coffee table, and the dog ate the whole bag. And what onions can do to dogs is actually make them anemic, and that dog ended up being anemic, and we treated it and it did fine. But that's another thing just to be aware of, because we do, as in cooking, put onions into a lot of things. So you have to be aware of what's in the food that you're giving to the animals, all right, or that they can get into. Let's see, we'll take a look at some of the questions here. Yeah, Geraldine. I think very few people who've had dogs, a lifelong dog owner myself, very few people have not at one time or another had a dog get into chocolate somewhere, especially like with me, with kids and Halloween trick-or-treating. You've got kids with bags of candy all over. I think that's something that I think most people have struggled with. Yeah, we can talk about nicotine as well. Absolutely. Let's see what else. All right. All right. We'll do these and we'll get back to the list because there's a few questions coming in. So, I think Amy, yeah, I think if we're talking flea meds, and actually we hit on those last week, and sorry we talked about them, but or the week before, but yeah, I mean they're the commercial flea meds that are out there are chemical flea meds, and are basically by nature, most of those flea meds are neurotoxins, and there are a lot of animals across the country that are on them, and that do okay on them. But obviously, you can have side effects from those meds, right? If you want, there is Earth Animal does have, they call it their Nature's Protection line. They do have a line of natural flea products, and it's a whole program, and we had gone over it. But if you go on the Earth Animal website and look at that, you can look through all those products, and certainly, like you said, they're all natural. There's no chemicals. Those are safe. So something to look into. All right. Let's see. Okay, so Kirsten, what I would say to you is there's a kind of, there's a saying that, I love you too much, right? So if with your pets, and they're looking at you and you have something, I mean, first of all, you want to be very careful giving any sort of people food to pets, right? I mean, it's because, they can, if they haven't had it before, even if it's something you think is really, benign or bland, you have to be careful. But I think if you have an ice cream that has components to it, like chocolate and things, I would avoid that. Just tell them it's not good for them and just explain to them why, even though they're staring at you and making you feel bad. I think you have to do what you can to protect them. All right. Yeah, Geraldine, and that's the thing. I mean, it's really dose dependent on the chocolate, right? So Geraldine said, luckily this branded chocolate has the lowest levels. Milk chocolate, again, has much lower levels than the dark chocolate, or cocoa powder has high levels. I had a dog one time that actually went into the cabinet at a home, went into like the Lazy Susan, took the cocoa powder out, somehow got the little metal pop lid off of it and ate a bunch of the cocoa powder. And again, that dog did okay, but that dog was sick. I mean, had to be hospitalized and everything else. So, yep. Stephanie, Dr. Ulrich, thank you. So I had raw dough for later on, but we could cover it now. So thank you. You don't want them to get into, if you're making bread, and one thing I have seen in the stores right now is trying to find any ingredients to make your own bread is impossible. You can't find yeast, you can't find, and so there's a lot of people right now kind of doing the homesteading thing, right? And doing things that they haven't done before and making homemade bread, but you just have to, watch, because you don't want them to eat the raw dough as it's fermenting, because it can cause issues. You're right, with the ethanol. All right. It's a good point. All right, let's see. What are the other things on our list here while we're waiting for some more questions? So I think in getting away from the kind of the food items and getting into some other things I think one of the I guess I would say emerging or more common things that I'm seeing now are ingestion of pharmaceuticals, okay? And NSAIDs in particular, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, things like that. If animals, and we're going to get to this in cats because this is especially important in cats, but dogs and cats have their own anti-inflammatories that we use because they can't tolerate, especially cats, but dogs as well, most human anti-inflammatories, what they call non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, okay? And, if an animal I've had several dogs that will get into a bottle of ibuprofen and break it open and eat, several pills or the bottle, and so it's really important with medications, and kind of the emergence now with several of the ADD medications, because they are amphetamines, so they're uppers. A pill gets dropped on the floor, or we get phone calls, and again, Steph, you could weigh in this. You get phone calls all the time. I dropped my pill, and the dog ate her. I dropped my pill and the cat ate it. And these things, while again most of them are dose dependent, and this is especially where you want to call your veterinarian or the ASPCA poison control hotline. It's certain ones are much more toxic than others and have a lower threshold of where that toxicity is. So that's always something that you want to call with, and just be careful about where you store your meds, because again, I always say that you have to protect these guys, your dogs and cats, against themselves, because they will do things that sometimes that's not good for them, right? And eating a jar of your medication is definitely not good for them. So you need to have those things in cabinets, up and away, and not on countertops. Again, like my house, we have a dog that will definitely grab something off there if we leave it there. So we have to be really careful. Abby, yep, you're talking about mushrooms. That's actually next on the list. So we'll get into what I'm getting into now is the outdoor, what we worry about kind of outdoor. Now, obviously, there is a lot of toxic plants in the outdoor. We can't go through the whole list, but two that I wanted to hit on because I see it, and we see it this time of year, Abby, a lot here as well. And it's something they don't mention a lot in like poison. When you look online and you look at poison lists for animals, they don't mention mushrooms often, but I see it a decent amount in my practice, both confirmed and ones that we suspect, because they'll come in, they were having vomiting, diarrhea. They're an animal that loves to be out in the yard. It's been raining a lot lately, and I know I see a lot of mushrooms in my yard. And when an animal goes and grazes and eats mushroom, it's a crapshoot. They can eat one that may just irritate them a little bit, or they can eat them that literally are deadly. So I do think it's important this time of year that if your animals spend a lot of time out in your backyard or your yard, it is really important that you scan when you're getting this is perfect time for mushrooms to come up here, right? We have a rainy day, it's hot and humid, we've had some humidity, and all of a sudden, and remember, mushrooms pop up really quickly. So really good point, Abby. I think mushrooms are something that you want to scan your yard when your dogs are going to be spending time in it, and if you see them, remove them, because they don't think they won't eat them, they will, and they don't seem to know that they're going to be bad for them, and they eat them. And sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you don't. So you have to be careful with that. And I'd say just scan this time of year and remove any that you see. All right. The other thing is azalea bushes. All right, I was just going to mention, if you have them, dogs will chew on sticks and leaves and go out in the yard and lay in the bushes. And one of the things I think when you're doing landscaping in your yard, I do believe it's important to talk to the people where you're buying it, these nurseries, and just say, look, here's my situation. I've got these dogs. They spend a lot of time in the yard, and really pick plants based on that. I think one of the And we're going to move into cats next, but one of the things that you learn over time is having indoor cats like I do is you don't tend to have a lot of nice plants. If you can maintain and you can actually, if you're the type of person who has a green thumb and you can keep them alive, oftentimes the cats will chew on them, bite them, and I think it's important that you have to know what kind of plants you have and you're bringing in your house and make sure they're not toxic, because cats, my experience is I've had very few cats that won't go after some plant or chew on it. All right, let's see. All right, Stephanie. Right, and that's something that we try to educate. Stephanie's talking about, she sees in her practice people that maybe on a Saturday their animal will come up with a limp, and they say, well, I'll give it an ibuprofen, or I'll give it a Tylenol, and they're just not knowing, and just so that you should never self-medicate your pets with any of your household things unless you talk to your veterinarian first. That's a good point. Hi, Vanessa. Let's see. Dogs can move fast and so stealthy that we always need to be alert, especially when they have found something that they know they shouldn't have and they hide it. Gidget happened upon a small chicken bone while we were walking. Foods are there in the grass and on the street or sidewalk. Right. And at their eye level. Yeah, and it happens very fast. And the other thing that, I think one of the reasons why we're seeing, I see more parasites now than I used to, is that we have a lot more kind of wildlife running around. I'm seeing so many, in our area, we see a ton of foxes. We see, there's there's just a lot of wildlife run through, and so these guys also can eat the feces from these wildlife, and there may be just little droppings in the grass you don't even see. They put their head down, they eat it, and that can happen with anything. It can happen with a piece of gum that's there. It can happen with a chicken bone. It can happen with anything. So, and all we can do, Vanessa, is be as hyper vigilant as we can, right? I mean, there are some things that are going to get by us, and you just have to, and you just be aware of how they're doing, but you have to pay attention all the time. I mean, I take so many things out of my young dog's mouth I can't even begin to tell you. So anyway, we're going to move on to cats in 1 sec. We'll take another couple. Hi, Jennifer. Suggestions for allergies this time of year. So, yeah, I have a lot, and that is a topical question as far as we're seeing the pollen counts are absolutely off the charts right now, and so the vast majority of my patients right now that I'm seeing day to day are due to allergies and itching and ear infections, skin things, and Jennifer, it ranges. There's such a big range of kind of treating them, and we did a show on this a little while back, and we were talking about allergies and things you can do, and there are a host of things. Jennifer, I'll tell you what, if you can, because I want to go back to the toxins, but if you can email me at Chris, K-R-I-S, at earthanimal.com, okay? And just let me know, what breed your dog is, age, and what's going on, and maybe I have some suggestions. Maybe I can help you. All right. So we'll take that one offline. Yeah, Angel, you're just with everything. There's a lot of stuff in the leftover leaves and the grasses, and especially when the grasses, in some of the areas aren't cut and get long. There's stuff that's hidden. So, you do have to be careful. And I think, one of the things, those, if they're, God forbid, if you have, an animal that had been, a wild animal that had been a car, something's in the bushes and that has been there a while, the thing to worry about with those is obviously things like bacteria and things that are there. And so, you want to get them away from, just pull them away and try to avoid those if you can. All right, Michael Cody, what are some signs to look for in your pet if they ingested a toxin and you were not aware of it? So because it's a good question, Michael, because these toxins all have different signs, I think that it's not really one sign, but it is certainly, it is, probably one of the biggest kind of communal signs that you see is oftentimes vomiting and diarrhea. Many of these toxins initiate with that and then cause other problems down the road. But something, sluggishness, seizures. I've had one of the dogs that I knew that I suspected had eaten mushrooms at one point came in and was very, very out of it and didn't know where it was. And so there's many different signs, but I think they can mimic other signs, right? They can mimic. So, and I think any time that you have an animal that is, all of a sudden very lethargic, or all of a sudden having vomiting and diarrhea, you want to call your veterinarian and have them looked at. It's not, it's one thing that if you were running around the park and they were a little tired that night, it's a whole other thing if they're staying in a corner completely lethargic, and so they usually do have kind of those, even if you're not aware of it, they kind of call it ain't doing right, Michael? It's like if they're just off in any way, I think it's always good to err on the side of caution and have your veterinarian look at them. You're welcome, Jennifer. Hey, Kevin, thanks for tuning in. It's good to talk to you. Thanks. All right, anyway, so cats. So like I said before, cats are really, you don't see the toxins as much ingestion as cats. I think the number one thing oftentimes with them is a plant-based toxin. It was someone that brought in, and I think above and beyond, and again, Stephanie, if you're still on, you're watching, just, I think above and beyond with cats is lilies, okay? Lilies are something that don't, there's many different types of lilies. Some have Some are relatively mild in what their toxin, how much they affects the cats, from just vomiting and diarrhea, and they can beat up their GI tract, to other species of lilies that can cause death and kidney failure and something. So it's with cats and lilies don't mix. Lilies aren't something that you want to bring in your house if you have cats. They can be really, really toxic. I think things have flipped now with cats. When I first started practicing, one of the number one things that I saw as far as toxins in cats was cats reacting to the old school organophosphate flea and tick control, both for the dogs and the cats. So, if someone would come home, and I'm talking store bought, if someone was in Walmart or something, got one of these really heavy duty, which I never suggest, flea and tick medications, and applied it to their dog, and if the cat was around the dog or licked the dog, they could get it that way, or they brought home the cat version and applied it, those cats would get neurologic. And we used to see a lot of that when I first started to practice. Thank God I've seen much less of that. I'm trying to think. I think I've seen one of those cases maybe in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's a good thing, because I think people have been educated more and more about those products and stayed away from them. I think what's replaced that as kind of the second highest are what we were talking about before with the meds. Okay, where somebody drops a pill, and they and all of a sudden the cat runs over and just swallows it. A cat that you've tried to pill with medication for years and could never get a pill in it when the veterinarian told you to, but all of a sudden decides going to eat your medication off the floor, of course, right? So I think that has probably replaced it. And the same thing goes with cats as dogs. The two things that you see is cats are extremely sensitive to the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. They really don't react well. They can go into really bad kidney failure from them, and have liver issues and everything else. So those are something to be always really, again, getting back to the vigilance, just being hyper vigilant about where you put your pills, not leaving them on the counter. I know a lot of people will put their pills, either on a napkin or something, and where they're going to eat. When you have cats can get on the counter, that's not a good idea. And a lot of people think, well, my cat's picky, it's not going to eat it. It's just not worth it. Sometimes they'll do things that you never thought they'd do in a million years. So I think you have to be careful with that. And with the advent of, when we see some of these amphetamines, these ADD medications, it's something that can really adversely affect them. Again, with the dogs and with cats, a lot of these cold medicines, right? Cold and flu medicines, or some of the allergy medicines that have the D in it, that have the ephedrine in it, they react poorly to those. They can get really high heart rates and get hyperthermic. So it's something that you want to avoid. And yeah, it's another good one, Steph, and for both, but something that they've seen an increase in across the board is cannabis or pot ingestion. Someone that has it at home, and the animal pulls it off. One of the things now compared to years ago is it's really the THC they react to. That's why hemp-based CBDs, when they talk about them, are so low in THC, 0.3% or less, and so animals can take those, as opposed to what you talk about cannabis or pot THC, which can be upwards of 28-30%. So that's a huge difference, and they can get neurologic from it. And if you've ever seen one as a veterinarian come in, which most of us have, it's pretty easy to recognize. The good news is, knock on wood, the vast majority of them recover with some supportive care, but that's something that we do. That's a good point, Steph, something that we do see more and more of. All right. The other thing for both, and this is, if you have cats that are mousers, both indoors and those who do go out, is rodent bait, okay? Most rodent bait now are long-acting anticoagulants. So I have had several animals that the people are unaware that they ever ate. Dogs and cats will eat the actual bait itself, so I never recommend having any sort of rodent bait around where your animals are. But also, if they catch a rat or a mouse that has ingested it, they can actually ingest it through that mouse as well. So they can get into it both ways. And again, something that if you see that they've gotten into it, or that that you have, if you know that somewhere, even where the animals couldn't get it, that you have some block in the house or some rodent bait in the house, and then you find that your dog or your cat has eaten a mouse or caught a mouse in the house and eaten it, I also then think you should call your veterinarian or the poison control because of the potential. Okay. The good news is oftentimes the treatment for it is vitamin K, which helps them clot. And if you can catch them early, again, the vast majority do well because most of these things are delayed. A lot of them used to be immediate, but now they have these delayed so that the purpose was so that the vermin could eat it and then go to another space and then it would affect them. So again, the good news is the vast majority do well. If treated, and sometimes I've had animals come in where all of a sudden they have bruising and you run their blood and their platelet counts are okay and things, and you always suspect that. So you kind of you just say, okay, we're going to treat them for this. And again, they do well. So that's good. I think the last thing as far as indoor toxins, and I think with cats, it's something that absolutely can affect them, both cats and dogs, if they get into them or if our household cleaners. A lot of household cleaners are toxic, especially the store-bought chemical ones, and they can really do a number, both as far as topical burning in the mouth and and systemically. So you want to always keep them away from any of that. Have that all locked away, like you're kid-proofing your house. Keeping away from your kids, you're keeping away from your pets. I mean, in a lot of ways, puppy-proofing and dog-proofing and cat-proofing is just like, kid-proofing the house, where you have locked cabinets, you have things in the garage where they can't get to. So that's all important. But we do occasionally I will see an animal that someone had just mopped the floor and they went lick the floor. They have a topical reaction or a systemic reaction. So you just have to be careful with those as well. And I think that's the majority of what we see in toxins. Like I said, there is a lot of stuff outside, a lot of plants. And when you're doing redoing your yard with the foliage, I think it's always good to check, especially if you have pets that are going to be spending time out there, right? Yeah, all right, Steph, that's a good point. I think if anybody ever, with the advent of people having their medical marijuana cards, there are a lot more people that have marijuana in their house. So I think one of the things that, as you pointed out, Steph, about being honest, is the key. If that ever does happen, the key is to be honest with the veterinarian, because being honest with the veterinarian helps them get to the point and treat them and just has a better outcome. So that is also a good point, Stephanie. Thank you. All right, I think that's it toxin-wise. Good questions and good tips. Thank you. I think it's time right now. Every week we do a spotlight, and we're spotlighting a independent retailer who works with our earth animal products, who we really love for various reasons. And again, I always say that it's really vastly important that we all support our local independent retailers, right? It's a purpose of talking about them. I know it's easy to click a button and order something online, have it come to your house, but these independent retailers have gone above and beyond. They're just, as we look into it, and I learn a little bit each week about these independent retailers across the country, the passion and the drive and the hours that these people who own these stores and the workers in these stores put in to bring you quality products and just look out for you and your pet's wellness and safety is really inspiring. And this week is no different. Okay, this week we're featuring the Natural Pet Center in North Royalton, Ohio. Okay, you can see that. And this is a nutrition and education based store with the largest variety of raw diets in Northeast Ohio. They have 27 freezers in the store, which is amazing. So great variety, able to match up these foods to specific animals, which is great. They offer only superior premium products and the highest quality selection of treats. They take customer service very seriously, and they strive to offer the most awesome experience each time a customer steps in their store. Their devotion to serving earned them the Retail of the Year for customer engagement and events at Super Zoo last year, which is a major achievement. If you saw how many people are at this big expo, that is a major achievement. We also love about them that they feed 4 of the local police dogs to ensure they receive the best nutrition possible, and they support several rescue groups with feeding programs and fundraisers. So please support them. They work hard for you and your pet. And I cannot stress it enough that we need to be supporting locally in this time. It's just vastly important, right? Okay, so we're going to do I'm going to give you a password, and the first person that calls the Natural Pet Enrichment Center with this password will get a $50 gift certificate. And one of the things I want to stress is we've been having people call from all over the country, which is great, and I understand it, but the purpose of this is we want local people to go support their local stores, okay? So if you can make it local and this is a store that's in your local area, please, I encourage you to call, okay? This week's password, Turtle. All right? First person to call, $50 gift certificate. All right? Natural Pet Enrichment Center. And please, let's continue to support local. All right? Yep, Steph, also fertilizer. Mulch can have chemicals in it that are not good. So these things, it's just, with my dogs this time of year, I'm outside with them when they're outside because my dogs get into everything. So I have to watch them at all times, and we try. All right. All right, everybody. Next week is our Ask Me Anything. So we can cover all topics veterinary next week. So I look forward to that. I want everyone to have a great weekend. Get outside, really enjoy yourselves, and let's see what we can go out with. It's good to come in with a little Stevie Ray Vaughan. I've been listening to him a little more recently, and I just forgot how good he is. So, all right, we're gonna go out. I think we're gonna go out with little Spin Doctors today. All right, have a great weekend. Stay safe, everybody. Talk to you next week. Get your questions ready. Those are usually great sessions. Bye.